By the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at wrestlingwithjohners.com. Hello, we are live again for another episode of Wrestling with Johners. I think we're up to episode 239, now. So we're really motoring along, doing really, really good. Part of the Johners Podcasting Network. Today, I've got with me the current main events wrestling heavyweight champion, the current MEW heavyweight champion, the jacked, stacked daddy. Shreddy, how you doing, buddy? Good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Love doing stuff like this. So thanks a lot for having me on.
No, you're very, very welcome. And we're going to be talking all about Shreddy's wrestling career so far, how he got into wrestling as a trainee, his background, his fandom of pro wrestling as well, and bodybuilding and all that good stuff. Can't wait to get into all of that nitty gritty. But if you want to get in touch with Shreddy, ask any questions live on the podcast, you can do. Just send your questions through on your chosen device, and we'll do our very best to bring them up on screen and to answer every single one during the course of this broadcast. But Shreddy, first of all, got to congratulate you. You are the MEW heavyweight champion. You won it in of the world, no less. But you won it at their January show, didn't you? But you've had a bit of a journey with MEW over your last 3 or 4 years. How does it feel to finally be their top guy, to be their heavyweight champion, buddy?
It's good. Obviously, there's faith there in the promotion and the promoter to, feature me in a prominent slot. Hopefully it leads to, a string of good matches. I was able to wrestle Kirby, have my first defense against him in a singles match. So hopefully it's the first of many, good singles matches that I can have, and, just keep putting the belt on the line and having some good quality matches.
Look at that. It's a beautiful championship. Looks even better over your shoulder as well, I've got to say. And you mentioned Martin Kirby. I think it was originally meant to be Adam Maxted, but a fantastic replacement, Martin Kirby. Tell us a bit about that match, because Martin Kirby came out of retirement last year. He's a bit of a UK legend on the scene. I'm sure you learned one or two things from being in the ring with him.
Yeah, so it was actually meant to be me and HT Drake.
Okay.
But a couple of people thought it was me and Max. I think it was just the way that the poster was. Me and Max said were kind of like the two main prominent slots on the poster.
Right.
But yeah, the match was me and HT Drake. So Drake was injured, so Kirby stepped in for him. Second time I wrestled Kirby. First time I wrestled him was a tiny little show up in just like a place called Blackhall, just a little kind of out of the way town up in the northeast, in front of a very small but loud crowd, family crowd. Yeah. That was a number of years ago. I probably want to say 2017, 2017 maybe. Wow. The ring was broke. I stepped foot in the ring and the board popped. So it was a bit of it was a bit unusual circumstances. So being able to wrestle Kirby at the show in a singles match, no broken ring for the title in a main event match was really good. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Could really make the most of it without any, broken parts of the ring hindering your performance. But since kind of Brit Rest came back last summer, about July, August 2021, your career seems to have gone from strength to strength. We mentioned the MEW championship, which you now proudly hold. And like I say, we've seen you kind of branch out around the country. I saw you not too long ago in Nottingham for Wrestle Carnival. But you must be really pleased with how your wrestling career is going, and especially since last summer, getting on for 10 months or so now.
It's a bit of like a head fuck, to be honest. Yeah. Because I have a lot of people, like on the surface, or like me 3 years ago, me 4 years ago, seeing the schedule I've got now, I'd be absolutely over the moon. But me now, as busy as I am, I'm just like, I'm wanting more. So as grateful as I am for everything I've got, I'm still not content with only what I've got, if that makes any sense. I don't mean to sound ungrateful for what I have got. But a few people have said to me, oh, you're so busy, you're getting all over the place, but there's still promotions I want to wrestle for. There's still, goals that I've got that I'm just not there yet. So as well as I am doing now and as busy as I am now, I don't just want to be like, oh, well, this is it now. Like, this
Yeah.
is, this is what wrestling's going to be for me now. I'm busy every weekend, so that's it. I can just coast. Not at all. I don't want to get complacent. I don't just want to take what I've got for granted either. So I am very grateful for all the opportunities I've got, because since lockdown, this is the busiest I've ever been. Hands down, it's the busiest I've ever been. I'm on some of the best shows in the country. I'm featured prominently in literally every single promotion I do now. It's never a throwaway spot. It's never, just, oh, well, we need to slot Shreddy in somewhere. It's always a really good booking, a really good slot, a really good feature. I'm on against good guys. I'm wrestling good guys. I'm getting feedback, from some of the veterans on the scene. So it is really good, and I'm really grateful for it. But as busy as I am, there's still more that I want to do. We can always be busier. We can always get, we always, no matter how well I was doing, I would want more. If I was signed by WWE, I'd probably be thinking I want to be on Raw and SmackDown. If I was on Raw SmackDown, I'd be thinking I want to be the champ. Like, I would never be happy. Do you know what I mean?
And that's a good mindset to have. That's a mindset of a champion and somebody that wants to, continue to go up. But what one sign that you must have been doing something right was facing this guy, Damo. I think it was about October last year for Target Wrestling.
November it was that, end of November, that short.
Oh, was it really? Of course it was. Of course it was. But when you got the news that you're going to be facing Big Damo, like I say, he was fairly fresh off of leaving the WWE and coming back and performing over on the Indies. That must have been a bit of a thrill for you. And then the whole experience of the day and the match itself. Talk us through kind of that whole experience then.
Yeah, so Damo, absolute sound guy, like learned so much from him, had such a fun match with him, such a great experience, such a great learning experience. But when the match was announced, it was probably announced, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks before the show. So it was my first time back at Target. I'd wrestled semi-regular with Target before lockdown. Really enjoyed every single show that I did there. All the shows in Carlisle. It's always a great crowd, great company to work for, run by, some great people. Look after you really well, really friendly atmosphere, good team. And this was the first time back wrestling for Target since lockdown. So wrestling came back in July. I think it was my first show back. So it was a couple of months in. And then when they announced, I knew I had the booking, I knew I had the date, but I didn't know who the match was going to be against. So about 3 or 4 weeks, I think it was, before the show, or before it was announced, I'd been cutting, like bodybuilding terms, cutting and like trying to get a little bit leaner and things like that. And I'd kind of thought to myself, right, I've leaned up. I'm going to start to bulk a little bit again now. I'm going to put a little bit of size back on.
Yeah.
And then that match was announced, and I was like, right, I'm going to continue my cut because I want to make sure I'm in good shape for the photos and the footage and things like that. So when the match was announced, was really looking forward to it because, Damo's spent however many years in WWE. Obviously, learning it was great on the Indies before he got signed.
Yeah,
went over to WWE at the Performance Center. Obviously, learning from some of like the best wrestlers in the world, some of the best coaches in the world, made it to the main roster. So for me, I just saw that as one, it's a good sign of confidence from the promotion to be able to put me in, that kind of featured match. 2, it's going to be a class learning experience for me to be able to work with a guy with all that experience, work with a guy who's accomplished so much himself. And then on the day itself, I was able to pick Damo's brains. We had a good match and really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And you obviously came out of the whole experience feeling that you've learned a few things. You said that you picked his brain, but I mean, the match itself, we know that the two of you, quite physical wrestlers, like to throw your opponents around the ring. You must have been on cloud 9 after the match, but a little bit sore nonetheless.
Yeah, definitely.
and Target Wrestling, Jody Fleisch, your latest opponent, Jody Fleisch,
Yeah.
a different beast, a different type of opponent altogether. We all know what Jody is capable of with the more high flying, more dynamic type of action. How did you adapt to going from, say, a Damo to a Jody Fleisch, two different types of animal there?
It wasn't hard to adapt because if you look around Brit Rest, there's not many big guys on the scene. Not that I'm particularly a big guy. I'm an in shape guy. I'm a powerhouse guy, but I mean, I'm 5'10", so it's not like I'm a huge guy myself. But a lot of the guys in Brit Rest are smaller than me. They're way less than me. So it wasn't really much to adapt to because I'm used to wrestling smaller guys. What was good about the Jody match was he's literally a living legend of
100%.
the British scene. So again, when that match was announced, I was like, bloody hell, Targets, just throwing them at me to knock them out of the park here because they're giving me opportunity after opportunity. So can't complain at all with how I'm being treated at Targets. The opportunities they're giving me and being able to wrestle Jody was again a completely different experience, but again, just learning from someone who has been in this job for what, over 2 decades. Way over, yeah, absolute legend.
Yeah, living legend indeed. I've seen a fair bit of Jody over the last 12 months for various promotions, and I'm sure for yourself to get in the ring with him was a thrill. But as we mentioned off air before we went live, Shreddy, I want to talk a bit about the scene up in the northeast, because it probably doesn't get as much of a spotlight as it probably deserves. No, you've got some tremendous promotions up there, some amazing talent. But let's shine a little bit of a light on the scene up in the northeast. You mentioned Target, and of course, Main Event Wrestling. If I'm not mistaken, you've got North up there, Full Tilt Wrestling, and probably a few more that I haven't got listed in front of me. But give us, a couple of minutes rundown of why the northeast scene, needs a little bit more credit and a bit more of a spotlight than it currently gets.
So as some of the promotions you just mentioned there, I mean, North's the main one up here in the Northeast. North is kind of what gave me my start, my break in wrestling before I was even, ready to have matches. I was a character on the show, was doing vignettes, was doing promos. So by the time I came and having a match, the audience knew me, the kind of audience responded to me. And again, since lockdown, the way that I've been, featured at North, I've had main event match after main event match. I've had singles matches with Gene Money. I was tagging with Adam Maxted at the last show. I've just been put in really good featured spots, and that crowd just eats it up. Like, it's such a great crowd to perform in front of. Andrew Bowers, the promoter, looks after us all so well. He has, ideas for everybody. He's receptive to ideas. He wants the best for not just the audience, but the best for the wrestlers. He wants the best locker room. He does have, one of the best locker rooms, if not the best locker room that I've been in the country, because it's such a great atmosphere there. Everybody on North is friendly. Everybody wants to put on the best show and work with each other. Everybody just wants to send, put out the absolute best they can for North and for that audience. So working at North, North deserves more, more eyes on it than it does. Like, not to knock, I'll be careful of a word this so I don't get any heat, but like, you look at other promotions in other parts of the country who maybe don't draw as many people, but online they have a much greater following, if that makes sense, or there's a lot more chatter about them online.
Yes.
Which is great because, having a strong fan base is good, and a passionate fan base, which North does have. But it just seems to be like in the Northeast, and this isn't just related specific to North wrestling, it's the Northeast in general. It's almost like what happens up here is almost non-existent online. We're not in that clique or that circle, that bubble that seems to be on, Twitter, where, everything just gets, all the attention and things like that. And there's a lot of great stuff going on in other parts of the country, but being from the Northeast myself, living in the Northeast, being born in the Northeast, you know, it would be good if some of the stuff up here could get some of that attention as well, because there's some great guys up here and there's some great promotions up here. So it would be good if, you know, that could get pushed out a little bit more. But for whatever reason, it doesn't, and I don't know why that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, I've been doing my research and checking out some matches from those promotions, and I know that North in particular is probably the standout promotion up in the Northeast, and it really does have. I think it has quite a broad. A reasonably broad fan base, but it does attract talent from all over the country and some international talent as well. So definitely worth watching if you're not familiar with North. And let's just kind of bring up their the logo is pretty sweet as well, to be honest with you. But like I say, you've also got Full Tilt Wrestling, Target that we've mentioned, and MEW. So lots to kind of get your teeth into, specifically in the Northeast anyway.
There's also other ones in the Northeast. You've always got Rise. They're not... I personally don't class Leeds as the Northeast. Anything south of Middlesbrough, Teesside, to me, isn't the Northeast.
Yeah.
I think technically Leeds is the Northeast. So Rise, again, is another promotion to look out for. If anyone's not familiar with Rise, they do a lot of crazy things. Big on the deathmatch stuff, which isn't, you know, my bag. I've not been at Rise in a while. But, you know, that's another promotion to be looking out for. And then in Newcastle, you've also got Prime Wrestling as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's have we'll talk about Rise then, because you did have a little dabble with them not too long ago, and they are known as more of a hardcore promotion with some kind of hardcore matches, death matches, and a bit of a kind of a dare I say a more hardcore audience. But what was your kind of experience with Rise? Because I've seen a fair bit of their stuff over the years, and I've interviewed stars that have wrestled for them, Big F in Joe in particular, and I know that he is definitely a deathmatch wrestler. I don't think you would ever class yourself as a hardcore deathmatch wrestler, but, how messy did it get for you up there?
To be honest, I've had more like brutal, if that's the word you want to use, matches at North.
Oh, really?
You know, I've had like hardcore matches at North. I've done more crazy stuff at North, which maybe is the Rise audience. Because again, Rise, and this isn't a knock at all. This is like probably one of the charms of Rise. Rise is almost a bubble. You have a lot of fans there who maybe aren't wrestling fans, but the Rise fans. So it's like a good night out. It's a good little bubble. Yes. So you have, don't get me wrong, there is wrestling fans who go there as well, but a lot of people will go to Rise because it's a fun night out. It's a great night out. So you'll have a lot of people who, or their only knowledge of independent wrestling, or maybe even wrestling, is WWE and Rise. And anything outside of, you know, on the indies, they're probably not aware of.
It could be lads on a night out, for example, looking for something a bit different to do. Yeah.
When we used to run the Brudenell Club, I know for a fact there was fans who used to just look forward to those Brudenell shows.
Yeah.
And they weren't necessarily, because we sometimes speak to the fans at, you know, merch and the interval and stuff like that, and they just really enjoyed the night out of Rise. Or you'd have some wrestling fans who went to Rise, they'd bring the mate along for a night out, and then the mate would be, oh, this is class, I want to keep going to this. They don't watch any other wrestling, but they love the night out at Rise. And that's genuinely not a knock. That is me complimenting Rise, because they've created this super fun night that can appeal to both wrestling fans and non-wrestling fans. But you do have a lot of fans of Rise who maybe aren't, you know, indie wrestling fans. So they won't be aware of, they might not know who North is. They might not know that, you know, we all wrestle at other places. But yeah, I've had a couple of, like my most hardcore matches I've actually been at North. So the Rise fan base, because the kind of persona I have there, it's very anti-deathmatch, very anti-hardcore. Okay. So some of them might be surprised if they actually saw some of the stuff I was doing on some of these other promotions.
Yeah, 100%. And like I say, not quite in the Northeast, but there or thereabouts, and definitely another promotion to look out for in the north of England. But before we continue, Shreddy, I've got to throw a quick sponsor shout out to our wonderful sponsors, 1310 Apparel, who are not only the sponsors to this very podcast, Wrestling with Johners, but also the Johners Podcasting Network, now up to about 49 channels on their podcast, YouTube channels from all over the world. And if you head over to 1310's WrestleMerch Central store, you can see their fantastic range of apparel, including their hardcore range of t-shirts, hoodies, their lucha range, including beanies and hoodies, caps, t-shirts, and the more traditional 1310 apparel and Four Corners t-shirts. And exclusively to their WrestleMerch Central store, you got the 1310 Heidi Katrina t-shirt, which is out now. And as a viewer or a listener to the Wrestling with Jonas podcast, you can take advantage of our offer with 1310 apparel. Head over to their WrestleMerch Central store by going to 1310.merch.global and take advantage of all the fantastic swag and apparel that I just showed you there on screen. There's more besides. And at the checkout, don't forget to use discount code 1310WMC to get yourself 10% off at checkout. But Shreddy, back to us. Let's take it all the way back now. I'm interested to know when pro wrestling came into your life as a fan, maybe as a young viewer or maybe as a teenager. Can you remember when pro wrestling first came into your life and how?
So I don't remember life without wrestling.
Really?
I'm one of 7 kids. Obviously got mum and dad as well.
Yeah.
One of 7 kids, growing up with 2 older brothers, 3 older sisters, 1 younger sister. My oldest brother, there's a big age gap between us. When I was like a little kid, he would have been a teenager. And I always remember, I remember WWF being on the telly back when the blue mats were down in like the early 90s. So I always remember wrestling kind of being on in the house. And when I was a little kid, it wasn't something that I knew much about or something that I was particularly a fan of, but I was aware of it.
Yeah.
I remember the In Your House PS1 arcade game, the like Mortal Kombat style game by Midway. I remember that. And then I personally got into wrestling probably around late 97, 98 is when I got into it properly myself. But I was already aware of like the big names and things like that just because I was conditioned to, I was just used to it being on in the house. I knew what wrestling was. And I don't particularly remember a moment that got me into it. I don't know if it was just one of those things, like as I got a little bit older and a little bit more aware, I kind of started paying more attention to it. I kind of started sussing out what was going on a little bit more. Like, it's weird because I have like nephews who, so I love Power Rangers. This is going to just a bit of all over thoughts here, but just try and bring it back to the wrestling thing. I loved Power Rangers when I was a little kid. Like, I remember when I was leaving nursery, going to primary school, my older brother was saying, "Right, you're too old for Power Rangers now." And I'll be like 4. I was like, "No, I'm not." And I was like, I remember maybe it's my 5th birthday, possibly my 6th, but I want to say it was my 5th birthday. I remember Burger King was running this like promotion, like Power Rangers promotion. So my mum and dad took me to Burger King for my birthday, and I got like a Red Ranger watch, like the Happy Meal gimmick kind of thing. And it was like all this Power Rangers stuff on, birthday Rangers, and power cake, birthday cake, and stuff like that. So I kind of grew out of Power Rangers probably was a bit younger than what my nephews were when they were getting into it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if because I kind of grew out of, I say grew out of Power Rangers, I've got Power Rangers stuff all over me. But I don't know if because like I kind of grew out of that when I was a young age, it was then, right, what's going to occupy me next? And it just so happened to be wrestling that kind of fit the gap. There was obviously the stuff I was into as a kid, like Pokemon and, you know, Marvel, Spider-Man, X-Men, things like that. Loads of stuff I was into. But wrestling, probably from like 97, 98, so I'll have been 7 or 8 year old when I really got into wrestling. And then what doubled down on kind of my love of wrestling, my fandom of wrestling, was the Warzone game for PS1.
Yeah.
Then the Attitude game, then the SmackDown games. But yeah, about 97, 98 is when I would say like I was an active, interested fan. And then before then, I just had like knowledge of wrestling, and it was a kind of something that was always there. So yeah, I genuinely don't remember life without wrestling.
I tell you, it's incredible. I've had so many guests on here that said it's the WWE computer games, console games that kind of introduced them to wrestling and that really got them hooked.
That baffles me because I just think if you're not a wrestling fan, why would you play a wrestling game?
Yeah.
And I have been in a tag team match. I won't name names, but I've been in a tag match with one of the wrestlers in that match who, when we were planning the match, we were saying, "I will do this. What move's that? Explain the move. Then we'll name another move. What move's that? So we explain the move. And this kept happening over and over in the planning. So I turned around to them and I said, "You have watched wrestling before?" And they said, "No, not really." And I was like, "Eh?" I was like, "So why are you a wrestler?" And they just did this with the hands, as if to more. And then they said, "Xbox." I was like,
Oh
"Right,
no.
okay." And I was like, "Fair enough." Like each to their own. But I was like, "Why would you play wrestling game if you're not into wrestling?" It was weird to me. But
Yeah, yeah,
everyone's got their
absolutely.
own. Everyone's got their own path into it.
Who were some of the larger than life characters that really pulled you in as a kid and maybe as a teenager? Was there a particular type of wrestler or anybody in particular?
So my favorite wrestler of all time is The Rock. Like when I was a kid, I've still got posters now that I had when I was a kid. Like The Rock was my
Nice.
guy when I was a kid, favorite wrestler. But in terms, I mean, The Rock's obviously a larger than life character. But some of the things that I remember, like some of the most shocking things, like I just remember Kane and The Undertaker being a kid. I remember there was not a backstage brawl, but a backstage segment where Kane was just going ballistic, like hitting security guards backstage, and I was like, what's going on?" Like as a kid, like thinking like, what's going on? Then when he had the voice box gimmick and he was talking,
Yeah,
I was like, this is like, as a kid, I was scared of that. Undertaker, though, was one of those characters that was like, what's this? One of my earliest memories, and this was game from probably, well, it was before I got into it properly. But I was watching it around a friend's house because he had an older brother and the wrestling was on. It was Undertaker Yokozuna in the casket match when it was like all the special effects going on and things like that. And it was like Yokozuna is mental. Obviously, Hulk Hogan, I knew, but Hogan wasn't around that time, but
yeah.
he was in like highlight packages and like little bits and pieces like that. Um, those were probably like the guys that stood out when I was a kid that I can kind of think of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm trying to get my timelines straight here because you've only been pro maybe 4 or 5 years. Am I right in thinking that?
I started training in wrestling 2016, started wrestling on shows 2017. I tell the story every time I'm on a podcast or anything like that.
Yeah,
I actually had my first wrestling training session when I was 15. Did 2 sessions. The second week, got home after midnight on a school night on a Monday, got the bus from Middlesbrough back to Hartlepool where I live. My
yeah,
mum and dad were like, "You're not doing this again. It's a school night. You got in after midnight." Didn't have a mobile phone or anything like that. So that like squashed it right there and then. Started training again when I was in uni. I'll have been 20, maybe 21. Found some local training, went to that for a couple of months. The head trainer packed it in. When the head trainer went, it just became a group of mates pissing about with the ring. As a student, not much money, having to piss about getting the bus there and back. I was like, I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting my money because these guys don't have a clue what they're doing. None of them worked short. It was just literally mates messing about with the ring.
yeah.
So that just gave me a really sour taste of wrestling because I was like, I really wanted to do this, and it's like this isn't for me. So I just thought to myself, right, that's it. Wrestling's not going to happen. I got into competitive bodybuilding, and I started going to the gym, and started going to the gym originally because when I was a kid, I want to be a wrestler. Then when I was a teenager, I want to look like a wrestler. So I'm going to start lifting weights. When I started researching and reading about diet, how to put muscle on, how to get in shape, how to get bigger, how to get stronger, I just started discovering bodybuilding. And then you see like Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, um, like that was just a whole other world. And I was like, well, this is class. So then I kind of shifted focus to bodybuilding and wanted to compete in bodybuilding. And then eventually got back to training, as an adult with my own car, independent, moved out to live by myself and everything in 2016. And then I stuck with it. So yeah, started wrestling on shows in 2017.
That's why I wanted to get the timeline straight because, so I know that you've only been pro the last 5 years or so, but like I say, that in between time, what happened in that in between time? And obviously, you had some bad experiences with your initial training schools, and then discovered weights and discovered the gym and
Yeah.
discovered bodybuilding. So we will get into your competitive bodybuilding a little bit later on for sure. Who looked after you when you kind of really got into it about 2016, 2017, your wrestling training? Who were kind of looking after you? Who was on the scene at the time? Who were your trainers?
So I was training with Rampage Brown and Screwface Ahmed,
Yes.
based up in the northeast. So Rampage Brown, obviously everybody knows Rampage. Screwface Ahmed might be one of those guys that some people aren't familiar with, but Screwface has been around for, I want to say 20 years, might be just
hell of a long time. Yeah.
He's been around a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to that thing of like, he's a northeast guy that just hasn't, got that recognition online for whatever reason, because Screwface is legit one of the best workers in the country. He's been all over the world wrestling. He is hands down one of the best minds for wrestling that I've ever came across. One of the best wrestlers, one of the best workers. And him and Rampage took training. So when I very first started, it was training with those guys. Very early on, I went to a Johnny Moss and Matty Jones seminar. I'd literally done 3 sessions with Rampage and Screwface, and then went to a seminar with Saxon Huxley, who's now in NXT UK. He's also I knew Saxon before he started wrestling. I just knew him from the gym. It was before I started wrestling. I knew him. So yeah, he told me about the seminar. Once he found out, and I told him that I've started wrestling training, he told me about the seminar that he was going to over at Johnny Moss's place in the Lakes. It was a weekend thing. So I went with him, did the session with Mossy and Marty. Then after
that, this one here by any chance?
So that is Marty, obviously.
Yeah.
That was in I want to say early 2019.
Right.
It could have been late 2018, but I want to say it was early 2019. That photo was taken during a week-long camp I was doing with Rampage. He had a week-long training camp on, because I think it was in Manchester. So I was staying at my girlfriend's house in Liverpool and just driving each day to that. Marty's place wasn't too far from there. So one evening after I'd done the camp with Rampage, I headed over to Marty's because I'd not been to see him for a while, and because I was in the area, not in the area, but it wasn't too far to go, about 40 minutes or something. Yeah. I went back to visit Marty, and that was his place. But I started training with Marty weekly, pretty much. Yeah, like I started wrestling training September 2016, and I started training with Marty like October 2016. So yeah, between Ollie's, the Rampage I was doing once a week. Marty, sometimes I would train with him twice a week. It depends on what the schedule was like. I would make it was a long drive, so I would go to Leeds where he was running training. I would go to Rampages on a Monday night when it was originally on a Monday. I would then go and train with Marty midweek at Leeds. Then he eventually got his own place opened up in Milne Row. And I used to go there on a Saturday some weeks. So some weeks it was like 3 sessions. But obviously from Hartlepool down there, it's, a bit of a trek, about hour and 50 minutes. So, but yeah, that used to be. So when I first, to answer your question, who looked after me when I first started, those were my coaches. Those were my trainers. Very early on, made friends with Rory Coyle, who, obviously big on the scene.
Yeah.
Back then, he wasn't like a name on the scene, but he was on shows and things like that. He came across some of my YouTube videos, I think, randomly, like however he found them. And we just got talking at training, and he asked me to go down to one of the NGW. So the Rampage's training was, ran by NGW. Asked if I wanted to go down to one of the shows with him, and that was a couple of hours down there in the car. Got to get to know him. It was my first time, like really spending any kind of length of time with him. We just got on really well, talking about wrestling, non-wrestling stuff, and I mean, becoming like, he's one of my absolute best mates. He's lived with me before, so he looked after me a lot and helped a lot with character development, promo work, put me in touch with North originally, and then things kind of went from there. And to this day is like one of my best mates. So those were the guys who looked after me kind of in the early days. But then along the way, there's been so many people who helped me out. John Moss trained with a lot. Chris Sharp trained with a lot. Will Charlton, one of my really good mates, but also someone who has helped me out a lot. Even guys like, who've been in the scene a little bit longer than me, like Adam Maxted, he's helped me out where he can. Always picking the brains and things like that. HT Drake has helped me out. I've trained with him a fair bit. A guy that again probably not many people know about, Mickey Long. Kind of similar to Screwface in the sense of really good worker, been around for 20 years, had a tryout back in 2012 or something. Has worked all the all-star shows and the like the camp shows and things like that. Not known online, but again, someone that has really taught me a lot and helped me out a lot.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like a lot of new wrestlers on the scene, they tend to be paired up. They tend to be put in tag team matches. You've had your fair share of tag team matches, tag team action and partners over the years. In particular, you're one half of England's Hardest Men. And also you won tag team gold with Benji in the Brothers of Rage. So some pretty fun times there. You mentioned Adam Maxted, and I think you teamed with him in North quite recently. Tell us about tag team wrestling and how that's helped you when you were finding your feet in the early days, basically.
Yeah. So just quickly touch on that point there. So yeah, Benji as well. He's again one of my best mates. Only know him through wrestling.
That's Benji there, I think, isn't it?
That's Benji, yeah. So I met Benji. It was when we were going down to a Dave Taylor seminar. He didn't know who I was. A couple of guys he knew who went to Rampage's training said they were going down. Like said they were coming down with me. Said for him to get along and jump in the car. I think he looked me up on Facebook. So I was a bodybuilder. Instantly thought I was going to be a prick. We met each other. He realised what a nerd I am, and Ben's like the biggest nerd, biggest dweeb going. We just became really good mates, and like now, like you have like in wrestling, you have like wrestling mates like that. I think is like. In any normal job, you've got colleagues, people you get on really well with.
Yeah.
But outside of office hours, it's like, don't really socialize with them. Very rarely would message them. But when you're at work, you're laughing all day with them. You then have mates who, outside of work, like those are the people that you can, like rely on and you can trust and you'll have good crack with. And I don't know what it's like for other wrestlers, but my experience of wrestling is like you've got loads of work colleagues and you've got a handful of mates, like people who, if I stopped wrestling today, a handful of people who I would still stay in touch with, and make the effort. Like they would make the effort to stay in touch with me, and you'd have more to talk about than just, oh, we got this show on this day, or this show on this day. Like you can talk to them when you're not in person, and you're not at a show with them, and like the guys I've mentioned already, like Rory Coyle, Will Charlton, and Benji is one of those as well. Again, Benji, someone that's helped me out as well. Like I'm always, just messaging him ideas and picking his brain for stuff as well. He like tries to wrestling's a head fuck, like I mentioned earlier. People will message me, oh Shreddy, like you're all over, you're getting booked here, blah 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 blah. But I'm looking at my calendar, I'm like, well, I'm booked on this show, but I want to be on that show. I'm not on, so like I must be shit. And Ben's one of those guys who like, gives me a bit of like an ego stroke or a bit of a confidence boost when I need it. So he's again someone that's kind of really helped me out. But me and Ben tagged together. We went the Brothers of Rage. That was Joe Rage. And
okay.
Me and Ben were just Benji Breck. We were dubbed at MEW when we were the tag champs before lockdown. And then when we came back after lockdown, that kind of just got reset and everything like that.
Yeah, and let's talk a bit about Adam Axted, good friend of yours. Adam also lives in the same neck of the woods as yourself. I had Adam on the podcast last year, as a matter of fact. Really great guy, doing some great things on the British scene. And like I say, I think the two of you complement each other very, very well. Not just because you're amazing physiques, of course, but I think you've got some contrasting styles there that makes for a good tag team.
Yeah, like it was some on one hand, me and Adam are similar.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we're complete opposites or complete different at the same time. Like we have that similarity of we're both in shape guys, but our wrestling styles are completely different. My kind of persona or the way that I connect with the crowd, the way that I would cut a promo, the way that I talk is completely different to his. So as similar as we are at first glance, like we are completely different, which it makes for a good dynamic because you've got that. Like, if you're a tagging, it's like you look at them and say, "Oh, they look like a good tag team." but we're not just like carbon copies of each other. We're like completely different wrestlers, completely different personas, but we have that commonality there.
100%, 100%. And
also, I'm an Englishman. He's an Irishman. Walking to a bar, and what's going to happen?
Yeah, and Adam's got the sweetest drop kick in the business, I think. He really, really has. Let's see, where are we? We met each other, didn't we? I think it was November last year. Was it Wrestle Carnival? And you were part of the Carnival Gauntlet match. A really, really fun match, a really, really fun occasion. Great to see you backstage. And of course, you did me the honors of a nice post-match interview there, where you knocked my cap and scared me a little bit there. But your speaking ability really, really stands out. Obviously, we know you've got a tremendous physique and a great in-ring worker, but your microphone work, your ability in front of a camera and in front of a microphone or behind a microphone really stands out as well. Is that something that you've had to kind of work on over time and develop? And it certainly comes across with the Shreddy gimmick as well, that you're very confident in your persona and certainly behind a microphone.
So Shreddy is just me, like literally Shreddy.
Turned up.
Yeah. I always say it ain't no gimmick, it's a lifestyle, and that's not a slogan, it's not a catchphrase, like that's a shoot. I am Shreddy, so it's not really hard to like fall into Shreddy, if that makes sense. The first place I was booked at as a heel was North, and that's because Bowers said I had natural heel tendencies. Take that for what you will. It worked out because since lockdown, coming back, I kind of ramped that a little bit, and I put the twist on with the Jack Sack Daddy stuff, and that's all new since lockdown. And I've doubled down on that heel persona, doubled down on like the Jack Sack Daddy stuff, which maybe isn't me every day, but Shreddy is. And I just doubled down on that. And, you know, things have just skyrocketed for me really since lockdown. So that's kind of worked out. What was the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, just your confidence behind a microphone and how that kind of your heel persona and like I say, being a great speaker seems to be kind of putting the package together.
I think before starting wrestling, like I would do YouTube videos. I was always like a confident public speaker, so I probably had like some of the skills, the base skills that could potentially transfer. But just because you're a good speaker, or just because you can speak well, or because you're confident, doesn't mean you know you're going to be a good wrestling persona, or doesn't mean you're going to be able to cut wrestling promos or talk well or whatever. Not that I say that. Not that I'm saying that I do that, but the point I'm making is you can be a good speaker or confident, but doesn't always translate into something that connects with an audience or something that will, make a good wrestling persona. So I don't want to say that it's just easy, because it's not. But I think having those base skills and that confidence of just being able to speak definitely has helped. But then coming into wrestling, I think I had an advantage in the sense of, for a couple of years, I was doing YouTube videos. So I was used to being behind the camera. And when I first started doing YouTube videos, it was around bodybuilding and like kind of like my bodybuilding vlogs and my workouts and prepping for shows and, things like that. I would almost film the videos as I filmed with Shreddy, and I almost saw treat me doing those YouTube videos as I was a wrestler. And I almost treat the videos as Shreddy's a character. Shreddy's my YouTube character. So I was able to just kind of, again, double down on I am just Shreddy for a couple of years before even starting wrestling. And then once I started wrestling, again, Rory Coyle had seen me YouTube videos. And it was like, oh, well, I'll just be Shreddy for wrestling, because that's
you had a persona already made.
I had a persona already, and people in the gym would call me Shreddy and things like that. People in the bodybuilding, would call me Shreddy. That's just how they knew me. So I think those definitely helped me out. But then it takes obviously work and practice to be able to be able to speak and cut promos. And there's a difference between able to talk and cutting a good promo, I think. The amount of wrestlers that you'll see, funny enough, I was talking about this with a couple of mates of the day. Warhorse just did a promo on me for North. Class promo. Put me over, put the promotion over, put the date over, put himself over. By the end of the video, and it's being posted, people seem to be looking forward to the match. There's a lot of wrestlers who, and I'm no expert to this isn't me giving, I might be wrong with what I'm saying, but there's a lot of wrestlers that when you see them putting promos out on Twitter or whatever, it's just, I'm wrestling so and so at this show. And when they say the name, it's like they pretend like they don't know who the guy is, or they pretend like they don't know how to pronounce the name because they're not familiar with them. And then they just run them down like, I'm going to come and beat you, and you haven't got a chance. Blah, blah. All right, cool. So like, you've just shit over the guy you're wrestling. You've acted like he's a nobody. So if they beat you, you're a nobody then. And it's like there's nothing to help the match. It does nothing to hype, but it's very. I don't like it.
Counterproductive.
Yeah, I don't like it, and I've always been taught that a good promo tells a story and gets a few points over. A good promo puts your opponent over, puts yourself over, puts the show or the promotion over. And if you're not putting the other guy over, what's the point in what's the point in doing the promo? And one of my pet peeves is when like you see wrestlers cutting promos and they pretend they don't know who the guy is they're wrestling, or they pretend like they stumble over the name, and it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And for any aspiring wrestlers watching or listening to this,
That's not me giving advice, because what do I know? Do you know, I've only been doing this for a few years.
Good, absolutely good advice. And I've heard that advice before as well. And certainly with regards to commentary as well, similar sort of advice is, you've got to put the talent over, otherwise nobody's interested.
Exactly.
Let's talk about competitive bodybuilding then. I think you said off air that you've got a competition this coming Sunday. But look at that man on screen there. Look at that tan. Look at the pose. Look at the body smugglers. It's all going on there, and it's all going off. But you kind of filled in some of the blanks earlier that you got into your weights and the gym and bodybuilding from an early age and before you became a pro. And you kind of been involved in several competitions, and you're still doing bodybuilding nowadays. What was it in particular that really fascinated you about bodybuilding? And like I say, you keep going into it every so often. You've got a competition this weekend. Tell us about your love for bodybuilding.
So yes, I just genuinely just fell into bodybuilding because of wrestling. I started going to the gym because I wanted to look like a wrestler. Growing up being a wrestling fan, like when I was a kid, I didn't look at Stone Cold and think, oh, he's got like a great physique. Or I didn't look at The Rock and necessarily think he's got a really good physique. But I think just watching those guys on TV, you then got conditioned, because those guys were in amazing shape. Like if you look at Austin back in the day, particularly when he was in WCW, more so than WWF, like he was jacked up. Like Stone Cold was jacked. He was big. He was in like 100%. Decent shape. The Rock was in great shape. Triple H was in great shape. Like so many wrestlers were in great shape without being body guy gimmicks. So when I was a kid, I think just like I said, because I don't remember life without wrestling, I think I was just naturally being conditioned to like, well, this is what like, because wrestling was always on in the house and always on in the telly in my house. So I just was conditioned to like these wrestlers and what they look like. So then when I was a bit older, like as a teenager, like Batista was one of my favorites when I was a kid. Like after The Rock had kind of moved on, Triple H was one of my favorites. Booker T was one of my favorites. Rob Van Dam was one of my favorites. Batista was one of my favorites. So it's like Triple H, Booker T, and Batista, three absolutely mint physiques. Eddie Guerrero, Benoit, two of my favorite wrestlers. Eddie Guerrero is one of my all-time favorite. Eddie Guerrero is probably in my top three favorite wrestlers. If you look back at Eddie Guerrero was never presented as an in-shape guy, a body guy. You look back at Eddie Guerrero and he was jacked. Like
he was cut, yeah.
He's a small guy in height. He was, if you saw Eddie Guerrero in a gym, you would turn your head. He was jacked, massive arms, massive shoulders, massive traps, big broad back. Like, so I think just growing up as a kid and then a teenager, that conditioned me to what wrestlers look like. So when I was a teenager, I was, I want to look like a wrestler, so I want to start lifting weights. Start going to the gym, just moving weights, doing the machine and stuff like that. You're lifting the machines and stuff. It's like you don't really know what you're doing. So what do? Go online. What do I need to do to put muscle on, to get in shape, to get abs, to get stronger, blah, blah, blah. And then you naturally come across like the bodybuilding websites and you're seeing bodybuilders sharing the training and the workouts and the diet and things like that. And then when I was exposed to that world and like what these bodybuilders look like, Ronnie Coleman, if don't know if you know much about bodybuilding.
I have heard of that gentleman before.
Mr. Olympia. Such a fun, like charismatic, like really fun personality as well. But if you look at Ronnie Coleman, he's a freak, like an absolute freak. So it's like, well, fuck me, this is like mental. I want to know more about this. And then you just kind of get drawn into like, well, this is Ronnie Coleman. And then you watch like a bodybuilding, like, you know, you see a bodybuilding shot of all the other bodybuilders. Well, it was that guy, it was that guy. You start reading these articles or watching these training videos to see what you need to do in the gym. And that's what got me into bodybuilding. So when I was young, I trained a mix between like powerlifting style and bodybuilding. But I never wanted to look like a powerlifter. I wanted to look like, you know, in shape guy. So once I'd been training for a few years, I was dedicating a lot of my life to the gym in terms of like meal prep, eating healthy, eating cold, dry chicken and rice at university. I'd cook it on a morning, wake up like 6:30, cook all my food for the day, get the bus to uni. No microwave, so I would be eating, you know, I would Tupperware just cold, dry chicken and rices, trying to get cottage cheese in and protein shakes between lectures and things like that. I was putting so much of my time and life into the diet, into training, time in the gym. It kind of got to a point where I was like, right, I like the look of bodybuilding. I want to do it. After I'd put, you know, some muscle on over a few years, I was like, I want to compete. And in my town is a former Mr. Universe, 5-time Mr. Universe. So he's won it more times than Arnold Schwarzenegger. He is the area rep for a federation called NABA, which has got the Mr. Universe. He owns a gym in Hartlepool. So I changed gyms, moved to his gym, started getting him to pick his brain and help me along the way. He was never formally coached me. He's not a coach, but he kept me right. He would help me prep for shows, show me and tell me what to do for training, give me advice on the diet and things like that. Yeah. And then, I started doing my first show and competing in my first bodybuilding show in 2013. Got the bug for it. My life was literally bodybuilding from 2013, 14, 15, a little bit of 16. Just bodybuilding. And then I don't know if it was like burnout or I don't know how to describe it, but so I moved out of my parents' house in 2016 as well. Moving by myself, change of relationships. I think it was just like I had a lot going on in my life, so didn't have as much time to just put into bodybuilding and competing.
Life took over for a little bit.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I don't get me wrong. It's not like I neglected the gym or neglected diet. It's just the competitive side of bodybuilding kind of took a bit of a hit. But then I also started wrestling. So then, you know, having to do the two. So I'd never competed in 2017. And then 2018, I competed again while I was still like wrestling. And then 2019 was prepping for a show, taught me bicep wrestling. So that was out of the equation. 2020 was prepping for a show. 7 weeks out was the lockdown. All the gyms closed. 2021, the federation I compete in weren't running shows because of lockdown and uncertainty. Yeah. So this is the first year I've been able to compete since then. Now, my focus has shifted. Like when I was younger, like say 2013, 14, 15, was bodybuilding. 2016 onwards, wrestling. That's what I wanted to do when I was a kid. That's what I want to do now. I'm wrestling over summer. I've actually changed, you know, a bit of a career change. I'm going self-employed to free myself up for more wrestling and give myself more availability for wrestling, for shows, for training, to, you know, just better myself as a wrestler, working on my kind of schedule so I can dedicate more to wrestling. So when I say bodybuilding, I mean competitive bodybuilding and doing bodybuilding shows, because the training and going to the gym always stays the same. It goes hand in hand with wrestling. The diet goes hand in hand to an extent. It's not as strict, obviously, if you're not getting ready for a bodybuilding show. But I always eat clean. I'll have snacks, and if I'm not getting ready for a bodybuilding show, I'll have snacks and a cheat meal here and there. But typically, like, you know, the first 4 meals of my day, whether I'm bulking, cutting, getting ready for a bodybuilding show, pretty much the same. Year round has been since probably I was about 20-year-olds, a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, something like that. So that's kind of just a part of my lifestyle now. And going to the gym is just part of my lifestyle. But the bodybuilding and the competitive bodybuilding, as much as I enjoy it, this if it got to a point where bodybuilding was affecting wrestling in a negative way, I wouldn't compete in bodybuilding. At the minute, that's not happened. If anything, it's not affected it at all. It's just put me in really good shape. So if anything, I'm looking better for wrestling. But if it got to a point where energy levels were low, or I was having to, dip out of wrestling shows to do whatever with body, I was just too exhausted and I couldn't. Like, if it was negatively impacting wrestling,
Yeah,
then I would stop the competitive bodybuilding and I would continue training, obviously, but
sure.
the competitive side of bodybuilding would be stopped, and I would just purely focus on the wrestling, because that's me. That's been the dream since I was a little kid.
100%. You mentioned about your YouTube channel. Now, I think you've had your YouTube channel going for a number of years, haven't you? But some excellent videos on there. You've got,
Yeah,
I think, 8,000 subscribers at the moment.
like yeah. I used
it-
to, again, when I was younger and I was like bodybuilding lifestyle, like that
yeah,
was life. I was putting a lot more time into YouTube then. And then again, I think it was when life took over, like that 2016. It was a bit like, there's a lot of effort going into YouTube. And, you see other people like blowing up and become YouTubers and they're making all this money. So then you can justify putting the time in. But when you're not making any money and you've got gym, like shoot job,
yeah.
life, social life, work, blah 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 to content. Then when I started wrestling, you've got all this other stuff going on. It's like, right, something's got to give you. And like YouTube, as much as I would have liked to have made it on YouTube and when I say made, I mean make money from YouTube
Of
to
course.
justify the time spent putting into the videos. When you're not getting that return, it's like, right, I can use this time for something more valuable. So then YouTube took a back seat for a long time. And then I started doing some vlogs again around wrestling. Then in lockdown, I had so much free time. And I think you found a lot of this, like this was a common thing with a lot of wrestlers during lockdown. There was so much free time that we got back. No training, no traveling to shows, no wrestling on weekends. You had all this free time. It's like, right, what do I
And these
occupy?
are highly creative people that want an outlet, isn't it?
You've got all this free time, you've got all this creativity.
Yeah.
So I started doing YouTube again. And again, with the gyms being shut and things like that, I was like, right, what can I do my YouTube videos on? And I got back into collecting cards, Pokemon cards. I've always been a card collector, but I got back heavily collecting into Pokemon. So that was, again, kind of like a natural thing for me to, right, I'm going to do that. So for about a year and a half, I was just putting like Pokemon content out. So my YouTube channel, in that respect, I should have maybe set a separate channel for Pokemon. But again, it was just me as Shreddy behind the camera. So I was like, well, yeah, I can still talk about the gym, but I also want to talk about Pokemon. So then I started doing some Pokemon content and some Pokemon videos, set up a Pokemon Instagram and stuff like that. But then I started, when wrestling came back, started doing vlogs again on wrestling. So over the past 10 months or so, I've had a mix of like I've not done any Pokemon content pretty much since wrestling came back. If I have, it's been 1 or 2 videos. And then there's been, not weekly vlogs, but there's been vlogs every so often of like show days for wrestling and things like that. And I've actually filmed a vlog when I was wrestling for Mega Slam last week.
Right.
I was away for a few days, so got some gym footage, got some like traveling footage, some footage of the digs and things like that. So it's just getting time to edit it.
Yeah, 100%. And I highly recommend you go out and check Shreddy's YouTube channel. Lots of cool content on there, whether you're into bodybuilding, whether you're into Pokemon, or whether you're into Shreddy's wrestling career. Tons of awesome videos out there, all very, very well edited. And like I say, I'll take my hat off to you. I can't wait for the day when I get up to 8,000 subscribers, but one day, who knows? But
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier, Shreddy, that you're ambitious. You want to break out across the country, work for more promotions, and you don't want to be content. You're not satisfied with where you are at the moment. Give us, an insight into where you want to be in the next couple of years and what sort of promotions you want to wrestle for. Have you got like a bit of a goal or goals that you want to achieve?
Yeah, so my goal when I first got into wrestling back in 2016 was to work for WWE. Like, I wasn't getting into wrestling just to have a bit of fun on a weekend or,
Yeah,
just to do like a local show. My goal was I want to work for WWE. I want to be a WWE wrestler, WWE superstar, whatever you want to call it. So that was my goal. And I was, from the early days in training, I Matt, you made that clear. I was like, the only reason I'm getting into this is because that's where I want to be. So the long-term goal for me is I want to get signed by WWE. Now, whether or not that's NXT UK, because the scene's changed massively since I started training. So whether it was NXT UK, NXT, Raw, SmackDown, whatever that would be, my goal is under that WWE umbrella. That's kind of what I got into wrestling for originally. That's the long-term goal. What do I want to do before then? A couple of shows I want to work for over here in England, Britain, UK. I say Britain or UK because the first company isn't an English company. ICW, Progress, Rev Pro. Those are kind of like the three shows that I've got kind of like that. The aspirational shows at the minute.
Yeah.
1PW has obviously just made a return. It'd be great to get on the 1PW shows. I want to wrestle in Japan, so I would love to. And again, having that flexibility now with work and on my schedule, I would love to go and do a tour of Japan. I would love to go and wrestle in America, Mexico. It would be great to wrestle all these places. But those UK promotions I just mentioned in Japan, it kind of me two immediate goals. And then long term WWE.
That's amazing. And like I said earlier, you're putting the package together. All the pieces of the puzzle are forming. You've got the mic skills. You've clearly got the physique. Your wrestling's come a long way. So I sincerely hope you get there. But like I say, there's a lot of UK promotions that can benefit from having you on their card. So I look forward to seeing you kind of spread your wings and get out and about around the UK. But I'd like to see more, like I say, a good promotion down here. It is Immortal Wrestling in Wiltshire. And of course, I'd like to see you more at Wrestle Carnival. So who knows? But Shreddy, it's been awesome having you on the podcast. Before we let you go, though, my friend, an opportunity for you to throw out any socials. Where can we reach out? Where can we say hi? And where can we learn more about Shreddy?
So, yeah, YouTube, I'll post
everything running along the bottom there as well.
At the minute, but yeah, head over to YouTube, just Shreddy Breck YouTube, Google that, or put in the YouTube, Shreddy Breck. I'm most active on Instagram, so Shreddy Breck Gym over on Instagram. I've got a Facebook page, which just pretty much links up the same with me, Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I don't use Twitter much in terms of scrolling. I post stuff. I actually put a post up the other day, like in the end of last year, I made a conscious effort to not get kind of focused on the illusion of Twitter and to kind of, get in that mindset of trying to be Twitter over or, popular on Twitter or whatever. And since I've kind of had that mindset and I've just focused on wrestling, training, speaking to promoters, getting on more shows, this year has been my best year of wrestling and I've not been focused on Twitter at all. Now, that's not me saying I don't ever use Twitter, because I'll go on and I'll post content. I'll post a photo, I'll post a tweet every now and then. But it's very, very rare that I scroll Twitter now, because I just think, like, it's not really much there for me.
Yeah. I much prefer Instagram and Facebook.
There's a lot of activity on Twitter and things like that. So it's like, I know 100% since I have started using Twitter less and stopped scrolling through and things like that, I just mentally, like, when it comes to wrestling, a lot of that head fuckery from wrestling has gone. I can just concentrate on being a better wrestler, being a better worker, being a better performer. So if you can follow me on Twitter, because I do post there, but I don't really scroll much unless I'm tagged in something. There's not much, like, you're not going to get much out of me really, but I will post on there. But Instagram is kind of where I'm most active.
Yeah, and your Instagram page is phenomenal, by the way, and definitely check out the YouTube channel. It's got to be done. A really, really fun YouTube channel there from Shreddy. But Shreddy, it's been awesome having you on the Wrestling with Jonas podcast. Thank you so much. Could you do the Jacked Stacked Daddy for us just before we leave, just to end the podcast perfectly? Go on, it's got to be done.
I only charge for that,
Go on, a little bit of a promo. Go on.
Who's the daddy?
There we go. Shreddy, thank you very much, and catch you again, my friend.